What if I told you that your greatest spiritual transformation won't come from the people around you, but from the moments when there's no one left to lean on, no one to applaud you, and no one to remind you of who you think you are? Have you ever wondered why the most powerful shifts in consciousness seem to happen not in the crowd, but in the stillness, when you are utterly and completely by yourself? Solitude carries a hidden power that most people overlook, yet it's the very thing that can make you unshakable on your path. You see, most of us are conditioned to believe that awakening should be done in the comfort of community. We're taught to seek teachers, mentors, and groups that share our beliefs because it feels safe. It feels validating. It reassures us that we're not crazy for questioning the world. And there's nothing wrong with that in the beginning. In fact, shared experiences can be a catalyst, a spark that nudges you toward the path. But sooner or later, every seeker reaches a point where leaning on others starts to limit the journey. That's when the universe has a way of removing the noise. Relationships fade, communities dissolve, the comfort of group energy disappears, and suddenly, you find yourself face to face with only your own soul. This is why awakening alone is so rare. Most people run from it. They cling to distractions, chase endless conversations, and surround themselves with validation so they never have to hear the silence of their own heart. But if you're honest, you know that the moments that truly shaped you were the ones when you felt alone and had no one else to depend on. Think about it. The heartbreaks, the losses, the dark nights, where you wondered if anyone could ever understand you. Weren't those the moments when you grew the most? Those seasons of solitude acted as a refining fire, carving away the unnecessary layers of who you thought you were so that something deeper could rise. When you awaken alone, you begin to break free from the invisible chains of external validation. You stop looking for someone else to tell you that you're on the right path. You stop waiting for permission to believe what your heart already knows. And while this might feel uncomfortable at first, it's actually one of the greatest gifts you'll ever receive. Because the truth is, as long as you depend on others to confirm your growth, your foundation will always be shaky. One disagreement, one rejection, one disapproving glance can throw you into doubt. But when you learn to trust yourself in solitude, your connection to truth becomes unshakable. This independence is not about arrogance, it's about sovereignty. It's about reclaiming the authority you once gave away to teachers, groups, and systems that made you believe you needed them in order to evolve. Awakening alone means you begin to listen to your own inner compass without needing to check the map of someone else's beliefs. You start to feel the quiet nudge of your intuition guiding you, and for the first time, you realize you can trust it. You don't need an audience to confirm it. You don't need applause to feel it. It's yours, and it has always been there. The power of solitude is hidden because most people are afraid to touch it. They fear loneliness. They confuse independence with isolation. But solitude is not about cutting yourself off from the world. It's about strengthening your bond with yourself so deeply that no matter what happens outside, your core remains intact. When you've walked through the silence alone and learned to stand in your own light, you become the kind of soul that cannot be shaken by the opinions or actions of others. You are no longer pulled by the tides of approval or swayed by the winds of rejection. Imagine a tree growing in the middle of a quiet field. No one waters it daily, no one praises it for reaching toward the sky. Yet slowly, steadily, it digs its roots deeper into the earth and stretches higher toward the sunday. Its strength comes not from the applause of onlookers, but from its own resilience. That's what awakening alone does for you. It makes you rooted in your truth and untouchable by the storms of life. Breaking free from group dependency is not about rejecting others. It's about no longer outsourcing your power. Communities can uplift, but they can also create invisible cages. When you depend on a group for your sense of belonging, you risk molding yourself to fit their approval, instead of embodying your authentic self. You begin to hesitate before speaking your truth. You start to question your intuition if it doesn't align with the collective voice. But awakening alone forces you to find strength within. You learn that even if no one else agrees, your truth is still valid. Even if you walk the path without witnesses, it's still sacred. Think of it this way. When you walk alone, you discover your own rhythm. You hear the whispers of your spirit more clearly because they're not drowned out by the noise of consensus. And in those moments, you realize that solitude isn't empty at all. It's full full of clarity, full of insight, full of the presence of something greater than yourself that's been waiting for your undivided attention. The rare souls who choose to embrace this hidden power often find themselves transformed in ways they never imagined. They become grounded in silence. They move with quiet conviction. They carry a peace that no one can take away, because it wasn't given by anyone in the first place. And when they return to community, they do so not as followers needing guidance, but as sovereign beings who uplift others without losing themselves. So if you find yourself in a season of solitude, don't rush to escape it. Don't assume you've been abandoned. Instead, consider that you are being initiated. The universe may have pulled you away from the crowd for a reason, to remind you that your deepest wisdom comes not from the outside, but from within. Awakening alone is not punishment. It's preparation. It's the rare opportunity to step into a power so strong that once you taste it, you'll never be the same again. Because here's the truth. Once you learn to awaken in solitude, you unlock a strength that no one can take from you. You stop living for approval, you stop shrinking for acceptance, and you start rising in the fullness of who you are. That is the hidden power of solitude, and it's waiting for you, right now, if you're willing to embrace it. Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable silence feels in the beginning? When there is no music playing in the background, no conversation filling the air, no buzzing of notifications to remind you that you exist in the eyes of others. At first, it feels unsettling. Your mind scrambles to fill the space. Thoughts rush in, old worries replay, memories surface, and suddenly you realize how addicted you have become to noise. You think you need the stimulation, but what you actually need is the silence. Because it is within silence that the deepest parts of your soul finally begin to speak. Noise is the mask that hides the truth. Every distraction you have ever clung to, the scrolling, the talking, the constant movement, all of it has been your way of avoiding what waits for you in stillness. When you sit in silence, you cannot run. You cannot point the finger at someone else. You cannot escape into the drama of other people's lives. You are faced with yourself. And while this confrontation may feel terrifying at first, it is also the most liberating doorway you will ever walk through. Silence is not empty. It is full of messages, whispers, directions, and revelations that the noise of the world has been drowning out for years. Your soul has always been trying to guide you, but its voice is subtle. It speaks in sensations, impressions, sudden bursts of intuition. It doesn't scream the way the external world does. It whispers. That is why you have to step into stillness to hear it. You cannot receive the wisdom of your soul when you are endlessly running from one distraction to the next. But the moment you pause and enter silence, something miraculous happens. You begin to notice. You begin to hear. At first, the silence feels heavy. You may even feel restless, anxious, or impatient. That is the detox. That is the residue of years of constant stimulation being purged from your nervous system. Think of it like a withdrawal from noise. Your body and mind have been conditioned to expect endless input, so when it's suddenly taken away, they resist. But if you stay with it, if you breathe through the discomfort and sit a little longer, you will find that the silence softens. It begins to cradle you rather than confront you. What felt like a void starts to reveal itself as presence. The stillness is alive, and within it, your soul is waiting. You might notice that in silence, thoughts arise with more clarity. They are no longer competing with the chaos of external noise. Instead, they surface like ripples on still water, and because the surface is calm, you can actually see them. Some of these thoughts will surprise you, others may disturb you. You might notice beliefs you didn't even realize you were carrying. You might hear judgments, fears, or old patterns echoing in your mind. This is the hidden noise that has always been there, buried beneath the distractions of the external world. When you create silence, you finally hear it, and hearing it is the first step to freeing yourself from it. Silence also reveals what has been true about you all along. Beneath the chatter of your mind and the conditioning of society, there is a current of knowing that has never left you. Have you ever had a moment where you just knew something without evidence, without proof, without explanation? That was your soul speaking. And in silence, that voice becomes unmistakable. It shows up as an inner nudge, a feeling that pulls you, a clarity that doesn't require logic. This is the voice of truth, and it does not need to convince you because it resonates so deeply that you cannot deny it. The noise of the world trains you to doubt yourself. It tells you to follow trends, to listen to authority, to align with the group, to suppress your inner knowing if it contradicts what is popular. But silence gives you back your compass. In the quiet, you begin to recognize what is yours and what was never yours. You see which beliefs were programmed into you and which truths emerged from within you. You begin to distinguish between fear and intuition. Fear shouts, intuition whispers, and when everything else is quiet, that whisper becomes clear. This is why the great spiritual traditions valued silence so deeply. Silence is not just an absence of sound, it is a sacred presence that allows the unseen to be seen. When you sit in stillness, you begin to feel the energy that underlies everything. You sense the way your breath moves through you. You feel the subtle vibration of your body. You notice the way thoughts appear and dissolve. And as you keep watching, you realize that you are not the thoughts, the emotions, or even the body. You are the awareness behind it all. Silence reveals this because it strips away the distractions that keep you identified with the surface. Have you ever sat outside at night when everything was still? No cars, no voices, no technology, just the hum of nature around you. In that silence, you may have felt an expansiveness, a strange kind of comfort that couldn't be explained. That was your soul recognizing itself in the quiet. The same happens when you sit alone in a room and simply listen. You may at first hear only your own breath or the faint sounds of life around you. But if you stay longer, you begin to sense something deeper, as if an invisible presence is with you. That presence is not outside of you. It is you, at the deepest level. The irony is that so many people run from silence because they fear loneliness. But silence is the cure for loneliness, not its cause. Loneliness comes from being disconnected from yourself. You can be surrounded by hundreds of people and still feel lonely if you are not connected to your own soul. Yet when you enter silence and discover the voice within, you realize you are never truly alone. The presence that emerges in silence is your eternal companion. It has been with you since the beginning, and it will never leave you. Silence is not passive. It is an active force that reshapes you. The more time you spend in stillness, the more you notice that you are less reactive. The things that once triggered you begin to lose their grip. The drama of others no longer pulls you in. Your need for approval begins to fade, and instead of looking outward for answers, you start looking inward. This is the shift from living as a reactive being to living as a sovereign being. Silence trains you for this shift. It strengthens your inner authority by forcing you to rely on yourself. And the more you rely on yourself, the stronger your spiritual foundation becomes. You will also notice that silence reveals patterns. It shows you how often your mind loops around the same worries, the same fears, the same desires. It makes visible the mental programs that have been shaping your life without your awareness. This can feel uncomfortable at first, because it's easier to believe that life is random than to see that you have been repeating the same scripts unconsciously. But once you see these patterns in the stillness, you gain the power to change them. What was hidden in noise becomes illuminated in silence. Silence is the mirror that reflects your true face. Without it, you are constantly adjusting yourself according to what others want, expect, or approve of. With it, you see yourself as you really are, not the roles you play, not the masks you wear, not the identities you cling to. You see the raw essence of you, and while this might feel vulnerable, it is also the most empowering revelation. Because once you know who you are in silence, no one can take that away from you. Have you ever wondered why life sometimes feels like it strips everything away from you at once? Why friendships dissolve, careers collapse, and relationships end just when you feel like you need them most? What if I told you that these painful seasons aren't random at all, that the universe is deliberately orchestrating them as an initiation into something far greater than the life you've known? This is not punishment, and it's not cruelty. It is the ancient way the universe calls you into your awakening. It's what mystics through the ages have described as the dark night of the soul, a passage that feels like death on the surface, but is really the birth of something new within you. When you find yourself suddenly alone, misunderstood, or stripped of the comforts you once relied on, your first instinct might be to think something has gone terribly wrong. But consider this: what if nothing is wrong at all? What if the ending of a relationship, the collapse of a dream, or the feeling of isolation is not chaos, but choreography? The universe often has to remove the voices you've been leaning on so you can finally hear your own. It has to close doors that you were too afraid to close on your own. It has to allow the old life to crumble so that a new foundation can be revealed. The dark night of the soul is a profound rite of passage. It is not something you sign up for. It is something your soul calls in when you are ready for a transformation you could never create by comfort alone. During this time, the light feels hidden. Your old ways of finding joy stop working. The books, the teachers, the affirmations that once comforted you feel empty. You might even wonder if your connection to the divine has been severed. But the truth is, this is the precise moment when you are being drawn closer. The silence is not absence. It is recalibration. The void is not emptiness. It is fertile soil for rebirth. Think of it like this: if you are carrying heavy baggage, there's no room in your hands to receive a gift. The universe knows this, so it engineers experiences that force you to let go. You may lose friends you thought would be there forever. You may walk away from environments that once felt safe. You may wake up one day and feel like you don't recognize yourself anymore. At first, it feels like devastation. But as you move through it, you begin to see the pattern. Each loss, each ending, each season of solitude is an initiation designed to peel back the layers of who you thought you were, so you can remember who you truly are. This gateway is not easy to walk through. Many resist it. They run back to distractions, seek constant noise, or desperately cling to old versions of themselves. But if you can endure the discomfort, if you can stay present in the silence, you will discover that the dark night of the soul is not darkness at all. It is the womb of transformation, the very place where your soul is purified, refined, and prepared for the light that is to come. In this space, your illusions fall away. You see clearly the attachments that once defined you. The relationships that were built on shallow ground begin to fade. The beliefs that were never truly yours start to dissolve. Even your sense of self may feel like it is disintegrating. And while it may feel like you're losing everything, what's really happening is that you're being stripped down to the essence of who you are. You're being asked to walk through the fire so that only truth remains. The universe uses loss as a teacher, because loss leaves no room for pretense. When something you love is taken from you, you are forced to confront what you cannot control. When endings arrive unexpectedly, you have to reckon with impermanence. When isolation feels like it surrounds you, you realize that the only companionship you cannot lose is the one you have with your own soul. And in that realization, a new kind of strength is born. A strength that is not dependent on circumstances, but anchored in your eternal self. Many great mystics, sages, and spiritual teachers have spoken of this passage. They describe how the path of awakening often leads through valleys of emptiness, before it brings you to mountaintops of clarity. If you are experiencing such a valley right now, understand this: you are not being abandoned, you are being invited. The dark night is not the end of your story. It is the initiation into the chapter where you finally step into your power. Picture a seed planted deep in the soil. From the outside, it looks buried, lost beneath the weight of the earth. But what is really happening? In the darkness, it is cracking open. Its old form must break so that new life can emerge. That is exactly what the dark night of the soul is doing within you. It is breaking the shell of who you thought you were, so that your true self can begin to rise. The power of this initiation lies in its ability to make you sovereign. When you've been through the night, when you've walked through the fire of loss and endings, you emerge with a kind of authority that can't be given by anyone else. You know what it means to lose everything, and still find yourself standing. You know what it means to feel abandoned, only to discover the divine within you. That realization makes you unshakable. And here's the hidden gift. When you come out of the dark night, you no longer need to cling to external validation. You no longer fear being alone. You no longer resist change, because you've seen firsthand that endings are not final. They are simply gateways. You begin to move through life with a deeper peace, because you understand that everything has a purpose, even the painful parts, especially the painful parts. So, if you are walking through a season of solitude, if you feel like life has taken away more than it has given, take heart. You are in the middle of your initiation. You are in the sacred threshold where the old dissolves and the new begins. You are not being punished, you are being prepared, and when the dawn comes, and it always comes, you will rise not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. The universe does not waste suffering, it transforms it. Every ending is a recalibration, every loss is a clearing of space. Every moment of isolation is an invitation to discover the presence that never leaves you. This is the hidden power of the dark night. It is the doorway to awakening, disguised as emptiness. If you can walk through it with courage, you will discover that the very moments you thought would break you were the ones that made you indestructible. When you begin to awaken in solitude, the signs do not always arrive with fireworks or dramatic visions. They come quietly, like whispers that at first you may overlook. If you are not paying attention, you might think you are simply changing, becoming distant, or even losing interest in the life you once knew. But what is actually happening is much deeper. You are shifting into a state that few ever touch. And because you are doing it without a crowd, without a teacher standing beside you, without the encouragement of a group, the markers of your progress feel subtle, yet those subtle markers are powerful. They are proof that your soul is taking the lead. One of the first signs is a natural detachment from the superficial layers of life. You begin to notice that what once excited you no longer has the same grip. The gossip, the endless pursuit of status, the shallow conversations that once filled your days now feel empty. You might find yourself sitting at a gathering and realizing that you no longer resonate with the energy in the room. It is not that you think you are better, it is that your vibration no longer aligns with those patterns. This detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. You are beginning to discern what feeds your spirit and what drains it. And slowly, without effort, you stop investing your energy in what feels hollow. Another sign is the quiet emergence of inner peace. Not the kind of peace that depends on everything going well, but the kind of peace that remains even when life is messy, unpredictable, or challenging. You may notice that the things that used to trigger you, the comments that once set you off, or the fears that once kept you awake at night, no longer hold the same power. You still feel them, but they pass through you more quickly. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of clinging, you let go. This peace is not a mask. It is not forced. It is born from solitude. When you have sat with yourself long enough, when you have listened to your own thoughts echo in the silence, you realize that most of the chaos in life is noise that you do not have to absorb. This realization anchors you. You may also begin to lose interest in chasing things that once seemed so important. The car, the house, the image, the approval of others, all of these once felt like milestones, proof that you were moving forward in life. But as your awakening deepens, they no longer satisfy. You find yourself wanting less, but feeling more. A simple walk in nature becomes more fulfilling than a crowded event. A quiet evening with your thoughts brings more joy than a night of shallow distractions. This is not regression, it is expansion. You are remembering what matters. You are returning to the essentials, to the things that truly nourish your soul. Loneliness is often the part that confuses people. When your awakening begins in solitude, there will be moments when you feel disconnected from others, as if no one truly understands you. Relationships may shift. Friendships may fall away. You might even feel invisible. In those moments, it is easy to believe you are being punished. But you are not. What feels like loneliness is actually training. It is the universe creating space around you so that you can strengthen your own foundation. If you were surrounded by validation and constant support, you would unconsciously lean on it. You would begin to mistake their approval for your strength. By walking through this period of loneliness, you learn to source your strength from within. Think of it like a muscle. Strength cannot be built if someone else is always lifting the weight for you. The solitude is your gym. It is where you learn to stand without leaning, to walk without guidance, to trust without evidence. Loneliness is not here to break you. It is here to refine you. When you come out the other side, you will realize that you can be at peace with or without company, fulfilled with or without validation, aligned with or without recognition. That independence is the mark of true spiritual power. Another subtle sign of awakening alone is your relationship with time. You may begin to notice that you are less rushed. The frantic pace of the world starts to feel unnatural to you. While others are running to catch up with deadlines, you begin to prioritize presence. You discover that when you are in silence, time expands. A few minutes of stillness feels as nourishing as hours of sleep. And because of this, you no longer crave busyness as proof of productivity. You begin to value depth over speed, presence over performance. This shift is one of the clearest indicators that you are stepping out of the collective trance and into your own rhythm. You may also notice a sharpening of your intuition. Because you are not constantly distracted by the noise of others' opinions, you begin to hear your inner guidance with more clarity. Decisions that once felt overwhelming now flow more easily. You start to trust your gut, even when logic argues against it. And when you follow that inner voice, you see how often it leads you exactly where you need to be. This is one of the most profound rewards of awakening in solitude. Your trust in yourself grows unshakable. There is also a deepening awareness of your patterns. When you are alone, there is no one else to blame, no one else to project onto. You see your shadows with new clarity. Old habits, emotional triggers, and self-sabotaging loops become undeniable. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. But with time, you realize that seeing them clearly is a gift. Awareness is the beginning of transformation. You cannot change what you cannot see. And in the silence of solitude, you finally see yourself fully, not just the parts you want to show the world, but all of you. This honesty is sacred. It is the soil in which true growth takes root. One of the more surprising signs of awakening alone is that even in the midst of feeling lonely, there is a strange sense of rightness, almost like a whisper that says, "Stay here, this is the training ground." Deep down, you sense that what you are going through has purpose. You may not be able to explain it, but you know you are being prepared for something greater. This inner knowing becomes your quiet companion during the hardest days. It reminds you that what looks like loss is actually clearing. What feels like emptiness is actually space being made for expansion. Over time, you begin to recognize that solitude is not a cage, it is a sanctuary. The more time you spend in it, the more you realize that silence does not mean absence, it means presence. It means being with yourself so fully that you no longer need constant distraction. It means discovering that your soul has always been speaking, you just needed the quiet to hear it. And once you learn to recognize these signs in yourself, the detachment from superficiality, the inner peace that cannot be shaken, the loss of interest in what is hollow, the transformation of loneliness into training, you realize you are not just changing, you are awakening. This awakening alone does not make you isolated. On the contrary, it prepares you to walk among others with strength. It prepares you to re-enter the world without being consumed by it. It makes you sovereign, steady, and unshakable. You no longer need to cling to people, to approval, to noise, or to distraction. You carry within you the one thing that can never be taken away, the voice of your soul, revealed to you through the silence of awakening alone. And once you have recognized these signs, you know that the journey, no matter how lonely it feels, is shaping you into someone who cannot be pulled down, because you have already learned to rise without being lifted. What if I told you that the very isolation you fear might be the greatest gift the universe could ever give you? That the silence you sometimes feel cursed by is actually the sacred fire designed to shape you into your highest form. When you're left alone, with no distractions to soften the weight of your thoughts, you encounter the refining fire of isolation. This fire is not meant to burn you to ashes, it is meant to burn away everything that is not truly you. It is a crucible, a sacred container, where your fears, doubts, and shadows rise to the surface, demanding to be faced at last. At first, it feels overwhelming. You might notice how loud your inner critic becomes when there's no one else to drown it out. You hear every doubt, every insecurity, every voice telling you that you're not enough. You feel the sting of regrets you thought you had buried. You see the shadow aspects of yourself, the jealousy, the fear, the anger, that are easy to hide when you're busy with people, but impossible to ignore when you're alone. Most people run from this stage. They reach for distractions, they numb themselves with noise, or they scramble back toward relationships that keep them from sitting in that silence. But you, if you've been called to awakening, cannot run forever. The refining fire of isolation will always come for you, because it is the only way to strip away illusion and reveal truth. Think about how precious metals are purified. Gold doesn't become pure by being polished on the surface. It has to be placed in fire, where the heat forces the impurities to rise. Only when the dross is burned away does the gold shine in its brilliance. Your soul is no different. Isolation creates the heat that forces your inner shadows to rise so they can be seen. It is not comfortable, but it is essential. Because the parts of yourself you've denied or buried cannot be healed until you face them, and in solitude, there is no one else to blame, no one else to distract you, no one else to hide behind. There is only you, and the truth of what you find within. The refining fire exposes your fears, but it also teaches you courage. When you sit alone and your mind begins to spin with doubts, you are invited to ask, are these fears real or are they illusions? You begin to notice how often fear is just a projection, a story your mind tells to keep you small. And in solitude, with nowhere to run, you learn to lean into those fears instead of avoiding them. You discover that fear dissolves when you shine light on it. You realize that the monsters that haunted you in the shadows are nothing more than reflections waiting to be embraced. Doubt, too, becomes a teacher. In isolation, you may doubt your path, your worth, your purpose. But if you listen closely, doubt has a hidden gift. It forces you to question what you truly believe. It asks you to separate what is borrowed from others and what is real for you. Doubt strips away blind faith and replaces it with conviction, born from experience. When you walk through solitude, you stop parroting what others told you to believe and begin to claim your truth from the inside out. And then there are your shadows, the aspects of yourself you've judged, suppressed, or ignored. In daily life, you can keep them hidden, but in isolation, they come knocking. The anger you thought you had conquered, the jealousy you denied, the wounds from childhood that still ache beneath the surface. At first, this feels like failure. You might think, why am I still dealing with this? Haven't I already healed? But solitude reveals that healing is not a one-time event. It is a process of peeling back layers, of seeing yourself with more honesty than ever before, and it is in this crucible that your shadows transform, not because they vanish, but because you finally learn to face them without judgment. Solitude demands honesty. It is the mirror that cannot be avoided. And in that mirror, you discover strength you never knew you had. You begin to realize that the fears you thought would break you cannot touch your true self. You see that doubts don't destroy you, they refine you. You notice that shadows aren't there to shame you, they're there to integrate you into wholeness. This is the refining fire at work, burning away everything false, leaving only the essence of who you are. Many resist this process because it feels like being dismantled, and in a way, the fire of isolation dismantles the persona you've built to survive in the world. It dismantles the masks you wear to please others. It dismantles the lies you've told yourself about your limitations. But what emerges from that dismantling is something stronger than you ever imagined. When you've sat alone with your darkest thoughts and survived, you become fearless. When you've looked your shadows in the eye and embraced them, you become whole. When you've walked through isolation and discovered your own light, you become sovereign. This crucible also awakens compassion. Because once you've faced your own shadows, you stop projecting them onto others. You stop judging so quickly, because you know what it's like to wrestle with your inner demons. You begin to see that everyone is carrying something. And from that understanding, you cultivate a deeper love, for yourself and for others. The refining fire of isolation is not a punishment. It is the universe's way of preparing you for a greater purpose. You cannot step into your power if you're still hiding from yourself. You cannot lead with clarity if you've never walked through confusion. You cannot shine your light authentically if you're still afraid of your own darkness. Solitude ensures that when you rise with truth as your foundation. So, if you find yourself in a season where everything feels stripped away, where silence feels heavy and shadows feel close, remember this: you are in the fire, but this fire is sacred. It is shaping you into the version of yourself that cannot be broken by circumstances. cannot be shaken by opinions, cannot be dimmed by fear. It is forging in you a resilience that no one can take away. And when the fire has done its work, when the impurities of illusion have been burned away, you will discover that you are more radiant than ever before. You will emerge not as the person you once were, but as the essence of who you were always meant to be. Isolation, then, is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It is the crucible in which your soul is purified, your shadows are integrated, and your strength is revealed. So embrace the refining fire. Let it burn away the masks, the fears, and the false identities. Trust that every moment of discomfort is chiseling you into clarity. And know that when you walk out of this fire, you will walk with a power that cannot be explained, only experienced. This is the hidden gift of isolation. It is the crucible that transforms you into your truest self. When the noise fades, and you are left with nothing but yourself, something begins to collapse. It is not destruction in the sense the world would define it, but it feels like your life is unraveling. What is really dissolving are the false identities you have carried for years. The masks you wore to fit into groups, the roles you performed to earn approval, the versions of yourself that were convenient for others but suffocating for your spirit, all of them begin to crack. You can feel the tension between who you pretended to be and who you truly are. And as this collapse happens, though it may feel disorienting, it is actually one of the greatest blessings of solitude, because only when the false layers fall away can you finally anchor into your true self. Most people live their entire lives chasing identities that are not theirs. They become the person their parents wanted them to be, the image their culture told them to adopt, the friend, the worker, the partner who fits into expectations. Piece by piece, they assemble a costume made of other people's desires. But costumes are heavy, and eventually, they begin to suffocate the soul beneath. When you awaken in solitude, that suffocation becomes impossible to ignore. You realize that you have been acting, performing a version of yourself that kept you accepted but also kept you small. The collapse feels frightening at first because the identity you built gave you stability, even if it was false. Yet, as it falls apart, you begin to sense the freedom hidden beneath. Your true self does not need costumes. It does not require permission to exist. It's simply island. But to reach it, you must allow the collapse to happen. You must let go of the roles that never fit you. This might mean admitting that you do not enjoy the things you used to pretend to love. It might mean walking away from relationships that only survived because you were playing a part. It might mean questioning beliefs that once defined your sense of belonging. The letting go is uncomfortable because it strips you of certainty, but certainty is not truth. Truth is what remains when the false is gone, and in solitude, truth rises like light breaking through the cracks. In this process, you begin to notice the difference between external validation and internal sovereignty. External validation is what drives most of the world. People live for likes, approval, applause, and recognition. They measure their worth based on how others respond to them. If people cheer, they feel valuable. If people criticize, they feel worthless. But this way of living is fragile. It keeps you dependent on forces you cannot control. It turns your life into a performance, and every performance drains you further. External validation feels sweet for a moment, but it never lasts. You always need more. You always fear losing it. Internal sovereignty, on the other hand, cannot be given or taken away. It comes from knowing who you are beneath all roles and masks. It comes from standing in silence and realizing that even if no one claps, no one praises you, no one notices your existence, you are still whole, you are still valuable, you are still enough. Sovereignty is the freedom to define yourself on your own terms. It is the strength to stand without leaning, to walk without waiting for approval, to choose what resonates with your soul even when others do not understand. This is the treasure that awakens in solitude, because when you are alone, there is no one left to validate you. You either learn to validate yourself, or you collapse. And when you choose the first, you discover a strength that no external source can provide. The collapse of false identities is often misunderstood. People think it means becoming nothing, losing yourself, or giving up the life you have built. But in reality, it is the opposite. You are not becoming less, You are becoming more. You are shedding layers that never belonged to you, so that the core of who you are can shine. This is not about rejecting society, but about refusing to let society define you. It is about reclaiming the power to say, "This is me," without needing agreement. And the moment you anchor into that truth, you feel a peace that external validation could never provide. At first, it may sting when you realize how much of your life was shaped by performance. You may grieve the time you spent chasing approval. You may feel frustration at yourself for wearing masks for so long, but this grief is part of the healing. It shows that you are finally seeing clearly, and as you sit with it, the heaviness begins to lift. You start to notice how much lighter you feel without the weight of pretending. You no longer have to keep track of who you are supposed to be in each situation. You simply are. This simplicity is powerful. It liberates your energy, your creativity, and your presence. When you are anchored in your true self, you stop fearing rejection. You realize that rejection is not a reflection of your worth, it is simply a sign that you are no longer matching someone else's expectations. And that is not a loss, it is alignment. The people who are meant for your authentic self will remain, and those who are not will naturally drift away. You no longer have to cling. You no longer have to chase. You simply attract what belongs to you by being what you truly are. This is sovereignty in action. The world may not reward sovereignty immediately. In fact, it often resists it. People who benefit from your masks will feel threatened when you remove them. Those who are comfortable with your old identity may push back when you change. But their resistance is not a reason to stop. It is proof that you are no longer bending to keep others comfortable. It is evidence that you are growing. And when the dust settles, you will find that life becomes clearer, simpler, and more aligned. Because when you are anchored into your true self, every choice comes from within rather than from fear of external response. You may notice that even your goals change. When you were living for validation, your goals were shaped by how others would see you. You wanted success so people would admire you. You wanted wealth so people would respect you. You wanted beauty so people would desire you. But once you collapse the false and claim your sovereignty, your goals shift. You want success because it expresses your potential. You want abundance because it allows you to create freely. You want health because it helps your soul shine through your body. Everything becomes internal first and external second. And because of that, your goals carry more power. They are rooted in truth rather than performance. Anchoring into your true self also means discovering a voice that is unshakable. This voice does not shout, but it speaks with clarity that no opinion can override. It is the voice that tells you when to walk away, when to stay, when to create, when to rest. It is not influenced by trends or pressures. It is steady. And the more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes. This voice is your compass, your guide, your anchor. And once you learn to follow it, you no longer fear being lost. The collapse of false identities is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the moment you stop being who you were told to be and start being who you actually are. And the difference between those two is everything. One leaves you drained, constantly seeking, constantly proving. The other leaves you grounded, sovereign, and free. And when you taste that freedom, even for a moment, you realize it is worth every discomfort, every lonely night, every crumbling identity. Because this is the power that can never be taken from you. The power of being yourself, anchored deeply into your truth, with no need for applause to remind you of your worth. Have you ever wondered why the most profound answers in life don't come in the noise of the world, but in the quiet moments when everything seems to stand still? What if I told you that stillness is not emptiness at all? It is alchemy, a sacred process that takes the chaos swirling inside of you and transforms it into clarity so sharp that it can cut through any confusion you face. Most people run from silence because it makes them uncomfortable. They fill their days with constant movement, endless chatter, and distractions that keep them from hearing what is hidden beneath the surface. But the truth is, stillness is not your enemy. It is your greatest ally. It is the space where your soul finally gets a chance to speak. Think about how the world around you operates. Every second, you are bombarded with information, opinions, headlines, conversations, notifications. Your nervous system is constantly stimulated, and your mind is constantly reacting. It feels normal because everyone else is living this way too. But normal is not the same as natural. Beneath the layers of noise, your natural state is stillness. Your essence is like a calm lake, clear, reflective, undisturbed. And when you return to that stillness, you begin to access wisdom that is impossible to find in chaos. Stillness works as alchemy because it transmutes energy. When you sit in silence, all the restless thoughts that have been circling in your mind finally have a chance to settle. Like sediment in water, the chaos begins to sink, and what was once murky becomes transparent. Suddenly, what once felt complicated becomes simple. What once felt impossible becomes clear. The answers that you've been chasing outside of yourself begin to rise from within. This is not magic in the sense of something foreign. It is the natural process of your soul speaking once you've removed the noise that was drowning it out. In stillness, you start to realize that guidance does not come from frantic searching, it comes from listening. Your intuition, which often whispers so softly you can barely hear it, becomes louder in the absence of distraction. You begin to notice subtle nudges, feelings, and insights that you might have overlooked before. And the more you practice stillness, the more you learn to trust those inner signals. They guide you in ways logic cannot. They lead you through paths you could never calculate. But here is where the transformation becomes even deeper. Stillness not only brings clarity, it brings strength. Because when you learn to be still in yourself, external chaos loses its power over you. The storms of life may rage, but inside, you remain calm. Instead of reacting to every situation with panic, you begin to respond with wisdom. You no longer feel tossed around by circumstances, because you've anchored yourself in a place that cannot be shaken. This is what it means to turn inner silence into strength. It becomes a sanctuary you can return to at any moment, a grounding force that no external condition can take away. Consider how nature teaches this truth. When the ocean is turbulent on the surface, it may look overwhelming. Waves crash, currents pull, and storms can make the water appear dangerous. But dive deeper, and only a few feet below, there is calm. The surface may be wild, but the depths remain undisturbed. You are no different. Life may stir up storms on the surface, but when you cultivate inner stillness, you access the depth of your being, where peace is constant and unshakable. That is where your power lives. Stillness also dismantles illusions. In chaos, it's easy to mistake noise for truth. You might mistake urgency for importance, or busyness for progress. But in stillness, illusions fall away. You see what truly matters, and what was only distraction. You recognize the difference between your authentic desires and the expectations others have placed on you. You stop confusing survival with living. And in that clarity, you begin to realign your life with what feels true at the deepest level. This process requires courage, because when you choose stillness, you cannot hide from yourself. You will hear the thoughts you've been avoiding, you will feel the emotions you've been suppressing, you will see the shadows you've been pretending don't exist. But instead of overwhelming you, stillness gives you the space to sit with them without judgment. And in that space, healing begins. By facing your pain without running, you transform it. By listening to your doubts without resisting, you understand them. By allowing yourself to simply be, you find that even your most uncomfortable feelings have wisdom to offer. The alchemy of stillness is that it takes everything you've been carrying, fear, anger, confusion, exhaustion, and changes it into peace, clarity, and strength. Not by force, but by presence. Stillness doesn't demand that you fix everything right away. It simply asks that you stop fighting yourself long enough for your true nature to emerge. And when it does, you realize that the peace you were searching for was never outside. It was always within you, waiting for you to slow down and listen. The more you return to stillness, the more it becomes your natural state. At first, it may feel difficult. Your mind will resist. It will try to distract you, telling you there are things you need to do, people you need to call, tasks you need to finish. But if you can push through the initial resistance, you'll discover that beneath the noise of thought is a vast stillness that has always been there, a silence that is alive, vibrant, and full of intelligence, a silence that guides you without words and strengthens you without effort. Over time, This inner stillness becomes your compass. Instead of relying solely on the opinions of others, you begin to check in with yourself first. Instead of reacting impulsively to circumstances, you pause, return to silence, and let clarity arise. And because your decisions are rooted in this clarity, they carry more power. They align more closely with your true path. They bring you a sense of peace, even when the world around you is uncertain. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by chaos, remember this: stillness is not the absence of movement, it is the transformation of energy. It is the alchemy that turns confusion into wisdom and weakness into strength. You don't need to run from it, you don't need to fear it, you simply need to allow it. Because within that silence lies the guidance you've been seeking, the clarity you've been craving, and the strength you didn't know you had. Imagine living from that place. Imagine moving through life with a calm that no storm can disturb. Imagine making decisions not from panic, but from peace. Imagine feeling guided not by fear, but by the quiet wisdom that rises in stillness. This is not just possible, it is your natural state, and when you embrace it, you become untouchable. You no longer chase clarity outside, because you know the answers live within. You no longer fear chaos, because you know how to transform it. You no longer doubt your strength, because you've discovered it in silence. Stillness is the hidden alchemy of the soul. It is where chaos dissolves and truth emerges. It is where weakness transforms into resilience. It is where confusion gives way to clarity. And once you discover its power, you will never look at silence the same way again. What once felt empty will now feel full. What once felt frightening will now feel sacred. And in that transformation, you will uncover one of the greatest secrets of awakening. The quiet within you is not absence, it is presence. It is the voice of your soul, and it will guide you unfailingly if you're willing to listen. When you walk the path of awakening alone, something begins to stir beneath the surface of your awareness. At first, it might feel like a heaviness or a sudden rush of emotions you thought you had buried long ago. Memories return, old wounds reappear, fears you believed you had outgrown suddenly surface. This is not a mistake. This is not a setback. It is the natural unfolding of shadow work, and it emerges most powerfully when you are in solitude. Without distractions, without constant validation, without the comfort of others to soothe you, your inner world becomes louder. And in that silence, you meet the parts of yourself you have avoided for years. The shadow is not your enemy. It is not something to conquer or eliminate. The shadow is simply the unacknowledged side of you, the parts you were told to hide, the emotions you were taught to suppress, the aspects of yourself that were deemed unacceptable. Every human being carries a shadow. It is created when we learn, often as children, that certain feelings or behaviors will cost us love, approval, or safety. So we push them down, lock them away, and build masks to cover them. Over time, the masks become so convincing that even we forget what lies beneath. But the shadow does not disappear, it waits. And when you step into solitude, when the masks begin to fall, the shadow rises to meet you. This rising can feel overwhelming. You may find yourself facing anger, jealousy, grief, or shame. You may hear voices from the past telling you that you are not enough. You may see patterns of self-sabotage playing out in your solitude. At first, you might resist. You might try to distract yourself, to cover it up, to run. But solitude does not allow escape. It gently but firmly corners you until you realize the truth. The only way out is through. And so you begin the work of meeting your shadow. Meeting the shadow is one of the bravest things you can ever do. It requires you to look at the parts of yourself you least want to see. It demands that you admit your flaws, your wounds, your fears, and your unhealed pain. But the miracle is that when you face them with honesty and compassion, they begin to transform. What once looked like darkness reveals itself as unclaimed wisdom. What once felt like poison becomes medicine. Your anger shows you where your boundaries have been violated. Your grief reveals what you truly valued and loved. Your jealousy teaches you about your hidden desires. Every shadow carries a message, and when you listen, it becomes a teacher. In solitude, you cannot project your shadow onto others so easily. When you are surrounded by people, it is tempting to blame them for your discomfort. You think they are the reason you feel irritated, insecure, or inadequate. But when you are alone, the mirror is clear. You see that the discomfort arises within you. This is painful at first, but it is also liberating, because once you recognize that the shadow is yours, you gain the power to work with it. You are no longer trapped in cycles of blame. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You realize that the darkness you fear is actually within your grasp to transform. The process of shadow work is not about forcing change, it is about witnessing with compassion. When an old wound rises, instead of pushing it down, you sit with it. You allow the tears to come. You let the anger move through your body. You breathe into the shame and remind yourself that it is safe to feel. The more you allow yourself to be present with these emotions, the less power they have over you. The shadow shrinks in the light of awareness. What was once terrifying becomes manageable. What once controlled you becomes understood. This transformation turns solitude into alchemy. The fire of your inner awareness burns away illusions, leaving only truth. The longer you sit with your shadow, the more you realize that even the darkest parts of you are not enemies but allies waiting to be integrated. The anger that once erupted uncontrollably becomes fuel for courage and clarity. The sadness that once paralyzed you becomes a well of empathy for others. The fear that once stopped you becomes an invitation to trust yourself more deeply. Every shadow, when embraced, turns into strength. It is important to remember that shadow work is not a quick process. It unfolds in cycles. Sometimes you feel like you have conquered a part of yourself, only for it to return years later in a new form. This does not mean you have failed. It means you are evolving. Each time the shadow returns, it comes with another layer of wisdom. You are spiraling upward, not circling endlessly. And each encounter makes you more whole. In solitude, the practice becomes even more powerful because you have no one else's energy to dilute the process. You are not performing healing for anyone else's approval. You are not rushing through the discomfort to appear strong. You are sitting with yourself, raw and real, and this honesty is what allows true transformation to take place. In those moments, you realize that solitude is not punishment. It is a sacred space where the soul does its deepest healing. Many fear the shadow because they think facing it will break them, but the truth is, ignoring it is what breaks you. Repression fragments the soul, scattering your energy into masks and performances. Meeting the shadow, however, makes you whole. It gathers the lost pieces of yourself and welcomes them home. It is the act of saying, "I will not abandon any part of me," and when you embrace yourself fully, you become unshakable. No criticism can wound you, because you have already faced your deepest wounds. No rejection can destroy you, because you have already accepted yourself. No darkness can frighten you, because you have learned to walk through the night with your own light. As you move through this process, you begin to notice how your relationship with others changes. When you have met your own shadow, you no longer judge others as harshly. You see their pain for what it is, unintegrated shadow, just like yours. Compassion arises naturally. Instead of reacting to their behavior, you understand it. Instead of absorbing their projections, you hold your ground. This is one of the greatest gifts of shadow work. It not only transforms your inner world, but also reshapes how you walk through the outer world. You become a presence of peace in chaos, a mirror of acceptance in a world that thrives on judgment. Solitude may feel like a lonely battlefield at first, but over time, it becomes a sanctuary. It becomes the place where you reclaim your lost parts and anchor into your wholeness. Meeting the shadow is not about perfection. It is about authenticity. It is about choosing to live as all of yourself rather than a fragmented piece. And when you make that choice, your life begins to align in ways you could not have imagined. Opportunities appear that resonate with your true self. Relationships emerge that honor your wholeness. The world responds differently because you are no longer hiding. So when the shadow rises in your solitude, do not fear it. Do not run from it. Sit with it. Listen to it. Learn from it. Every tear you shed, every fear you face, every memory you revisit is part of the sacred training. You are being refined, you are being expanded, you are being made whole. And in that wholeness, you discover the greatest truth of all. The darkness was never there to destroy you. It was always there to guide you back to the light within. Have you ever wondered why your deepest abilities often remain hidden until you are left completely on your own? What if I told you that the very gifts you've been searching for are already within you, waiting for the silence of solitude to awaken them? When you no longer lean on others for direction, when the voices of the outside world fade, something extraordinary begins to happen. The noise that once kept you distracted disappears, and what rises in its place is the subtle, powerful awareness of your own inner gifts. These gifts have always been there, but solitude sharpens them like a blade pressed against stone, revealing capacities that remain dormant in the presence of constant validation or noise. Hidden abilities often lie beneath the surface of your daily life, concealed by routine and conditioned behavior. Think about it. When you're surrounded by people, it's easy to mirror their energy, to adopt their beliefs, and to depend on their opinions to guide your decisions. In that state, your intuition becomes muted, overshadowed by the louder voices around you. But when you step into solitude, you strip away those influences, and what remains is the raw signal of your own soul. Suddenly, you begin to sense things more clearly. You notice subtle shifts in energy, whispers of guidance, and insights that feel like they arrive out of nowhere. In truth, they don't come from nowhere. They come from the depths of your being, finally given the space to rise. This is why solitude becomes the great activator. Without distraction, your senses expand. Your intuition, which might have once seemed faint and unreliable, grows stronger, like a muscle exercised through practice. You start to trust the subtle nudges that tell you when to move forward or when to pause. You recognize the quiet pull that guides you toward opportunities or away from danger. These are not coincidences. They are your latent gifts awakening, and the more you listen, the more accurate they become. Solitude also awakens awareness in ways that are difficult to describe until you experience them. In the stillness, your perception of life sharpens. You begin to notice details you once overlooked: the rhythm of your breath, the subtle sensations in your body, the faint hum of energy around you. These observations open you to dimensions of awareness that most people never notice. You start to sense the interconnectedness of all things, the way your thoughts ripple outward, and the way the universe seems to respond to your inner state. The more attuned you become, the more you realize that awareness itself is a gift, one that holds the power to transform how you live. Some of the greatest gifts hidden in solitude are not flashy or dramatic. They are subtle, yet deeply profound. You may find that you have a natural gift for sensing the emotions of others, even when they are unspoken. You may notice that your dreams become vivid, carrying symbolic messages that guide you in waking life. You might discover that your creativity flows more freely, as if an unseen channel has opened within you. Or you may simply find that your decisions begin to feel guided by a force greater than logic, a force that never seems to lead you astray. It is in solitude that these abilities are cultivated, because solitude demands that you rely on yourself. When there is no one else to lean on, you are forced to trust your inner compass. At first, it feels risky. You might question whether your intuition is real or just imagination, but with time, you see the evidence. The more you listen to yourself, the more life aligns. The right people appear at the right time. The right opportunities seem to flow effortlessly. And you realize that this alignment is not luck. It is the natural outcome of tuning into your gifts. The awakening of these latent gifts also brings with it a deeper sense of empowerment. No longer do you feel the need to chase after external guidance, because you know the answers lie within. No longer do you feel powerless in the face of uncertainty, because you've cultivated an inner awareness that can see beyond confusion. This shift is life-changing. You begin to move with confidence, not because you know every step in advance, but because you trust that each step will reveal itself in perfect timing. Another gift that solitude sharpens is presence. When you're alone, you learn to sit fully with the moment. You're no longer scattered by 1,000 conversations or pulled in 100 directions. You begin to notice the richness of each experience, the texture of silence, the warmth of sunlight, the peace that comes from simply existing without striving. This presence opens the doorway to states of consciousness that are extraordinary. In presence, time seems to slow down. Insights come as if whispered directly to your heart, and with each moment of presence, your connection to the divine deepens. But perhaps the most profound gift that emerges in solitude is self-mastery. When you no longer rely on others to define you, you learn to master your own energy. You notice how your thoughts shape your emotions, and how your emotions shape your reality. You become aware of the patterns that once controlled you, and in that awareness, you gain the power to change them. This mastery allows you to shift from being a passive participant in life to being an active creator. You realize that the energy you emit draws experiences toward you, and you begin to consciously align that energy with the life you desire. Of course, solitude is not always easy. The gifts don't reveal themselves overnight. At first, solitude can feel like emptiness, and the silence can feel unbearable. But if you stay with it, if you resist the urge to run back to distractions, you will discover that the silence is alive. It is full of treasures waiting to be uncovered. And once you touch those treasures, once you experience the clarity of intuition, the depth of awareness, and the strength of self-reliance, you will never see solitude the same way again. The truth is, your latent gifts are not something you need to create. They are already within you, encoded in your very being. What solitude does is remove the static that blocks you from experiencing them. It clears the space so that your natural abilities can shine, and once they are awakened, they don't disappear when you return to the world. Instead, they travel with you, guiding you, strengthening you, reminding you that you are never truly alone. So the next time you find yourself in solitude, instead of resisting it, lean into it, treat it as sacred ground. Ask yourself what gifts are waiting to be revealed. Pay attention to the subtle nudges, the quiet insights, the new levels of awareness that arise. Trust that everything you need is already within you, waiting for you to notice it. Because the truth is, solitude is not empty. It is the birthplace of your power. And when you awaken your latent gifts, you step into a level of awareness and strength that no one can take away from you. You will find that your solitude is not a prison, but a sanctuary. It is the place where you learn to hear the voice of your soul, to trust your intuition, and to move with clarity in a world that thrives on confusion. And in that sanctuary, you will discover the greatest secret of all. You were never lacking anything. You simply needed the stillness of solitude to remember who you are and what you carry within you. When you awaken alone, you start to notice something that most people never realize. Much of what you once believed was yours never truly belonged to you. Your fears, your desires, even many of your opinions were absorbed from the collective around you. From childhood you were immersed in the vibrations of family, society, and culture, and without questioning it, you carried those energies as if they were your own. You believed you were choosing freely, but in truth, you were often replaying the programming of others. This is why awakening in solitude feels so radical. It removes you from the constant influence of external vibrations long enough for you to recognize which energies are yours and which were never yours to begin with. That recognition is the beginning of energetic sovereignty. Energetic sovereignty means becoming the master of your own frequency. Instead of being shaped and pulled by the vibrations of others, you begin to radiate from your own source. But before this happens, you must first break free from the subtle web of collective programming. Collective energy is persuasive. It tells you what to value, what to fear, what to chase. It tells you what success looks like, what love should be, what happiness is supposed to mean. These messages are repeated so often that they form an invisible cage, a field of vibrations you carry unconsciously. In solitude, the noise quiets, and suddenly you feel the cage pressing against you. The very beliefs that once felt natural now feel suffocating. You begin to see that much of what you pursued was never aligned with your soul at all. Breaking free from collective programming is not about rejecting the world. It is about reclaiming your power to choose. It is about realizing that you no longer have to live by vibrations that do not resonate with you. You no longer need to absorb the fear that the media projects, the scarcity mindset that society reinforces, or the competitive energy that drives so many people into exhaustion. Instead, you begin to notice how these vibrations feel in your body. Fear feels heavy, scarcity feels constricting, competition feels restless. And once you see the difference between what drains you and what nourishes you, you stop unconsciously absorbing everything around you. You step back, you observe, and you choose. This is the moment you begin to emit rather than absorb. Emitting energy means radiating from the inside out. It means no longer being at the mercy of external circumstances to determine how you feel. Instead of letting the mood of the crowd dictate your vibration, you decide the frequency you wish to carry, and you hold it. When others are fearful, you choose calm. When others are angry, you choose centeredness. When others are lost in superficiality, you choose depth. And what begins as an inner decision soon becomes a powerful energetic field. People sense it. They feel lighter around you, clearer in your presence, because you are no longer taking on their chaos. You are radiating stability, and stability is magnetic. This shift does not happen overnight. At first, you will notice how deeply conditioned you are to absorb energy. You walk into a room filled with tension, and without thinking, your body tightens. You scroll through messages filled with negativity, and your heart sinks. You hear others doubting themselves, and you begin to doubt yourself too. This is the old way of being, reactive, porous, unguarded. But the more you practice awareness, the more you learn to stop this automatic absorption. You breathe, you ground yourself. You remind yourself that what others are carrying is not yours. You let their energy pass through like wind instead of holding it like a weight. And little by little, you train yourself to remain sovereign. There is a great freedom in learning to emit. You realize that your vibration is not fragile, it is creative. What you choose to radiate shapes not only your own experience, but the environment around you. Think of how one calm person can diffuse an entire argument, or how one joyful presence can lift the energy of a room. This is not coincidence. It is the power of emitted energy. When you become sovereign, you stop waiting for the world to give you peace. You generate it. You stop hoping for circumstances to bring you happiness. You create it, and the more you radiate, the more life mirrors it back to you, because energy responds to energy. But energetic sovereignty is not just about holding positive energy. It is about holding true energy. It is about being so anchored in your essence that you cannot be swayed by manipulation, fear, or external influence. This is why solitude is such a powerful training ground. Without constant reinforcement from others, you are forced to define your frequency from within. You learn to sit in your own presence and discover what you actually feel, what you truly desire, what you are ready to release. You become fluent in your own vibration, and this fluency makes you unshakable. Others may project onto you, they may try to pull you into their chaos, but you recognize it for what it is, and you choose to remain aligned. One of the most profound realizations that comes with energetic sovereignty is that you are not here to mirror the collective, you are here to elevate it. The world does not need more people absorbing the same fear and reproducing the same doubt. The world needs individuals who are brave enough to radiate a different frequency. Truth instead of illusion, love instead of fear, abundance instead of scarcity. And when you live this way, you discover that your energy begins to shape not only your life but the lives of those around you. Your sovereignty becomes service, not because you are trying to change others, but because authenticity naturally uplifts. Of course, there will be challenges. There will be moments when the pull of the collective feels overwhelming, when fear spreads like wildfire, when the noise of the world feels impossible to ignore. These are the tests. In those moments, you will feel the temptation to collapse back into absorption, to let others' energy dictate your state. But this is exactly why solitude has trained you. You have learned to recognize what is yours and what is not. You have learned to pause, to breathe, to return to your own center. And when you do, you realize that sovereignty is not about never being affected, it is about always returning to your essence no matter what. With practice, emitting energy becomes natural. It is not something you force, it is simply who you are. Just as the sun does not struggle to shine, you no longer struggle to radiate. You have anchored into a frequency that is authentic, and authenticity flows effortlessly. People may not understand it, some may even resist it, because your sovereignty highlights their dependency. But the truth is, those who are ready will be drawn to you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And your presence will remind them of their own ability to be sovereign as well. Breaking free from collective programming and choosing to emit rather than absorb is not just a personal practice, it is a spiritual revolution. It is the declaration that you will no longer be a passive recipient of vibrations that do not serve you. It is the choice to become an active creator of energy, aligned with your soul. And when you live this way, you discover that sovereignty is not isolation, it is connection of the highest kind, connection to your essence, to the universe, and to the truth that has always been within you. This is the gift of awakening in solitude. It strips away the illusions until nothing remains but the radiant, sovereign being you were always meant to be. What if I told you that the very moments when you feel most alone are actually building the foundation of your power, that the solitude you sometimes see as weakness is the very thing that makes you unshakable? Awakening alone is not just about personal growth. It is about constructing a core within you that no storm can shake and no opinion can uproot. When you walk this path without leaning on the noise of the crowd, you create a strength so deep that it becomes immovable, a foundation that cannot be touched by chaos or broken by rejection. When you awaken in solitude, you are forced to discover stability within yourself. Without the constant reassurance of others, you begin to anchor into something deeper, the quiet certainty of your own soul. At first, this feels terrifying. You may crave the validation that comes from someone telling you that you're on the right path. You may long for the comfort of belonging to a group that agrees with your choices. But in time, you see that these things are fragile. They can vanish in an instant. The applause can fade. The crowd can turn. Opinions can shift. What you gain in solitude is far greater. You begin to build a foundation that doesn't depend on the shifting sands of other people's approval. This is why awakening alone creates an immovable spiritual core. When you no longer need external confirmation to trust your own truth, you become centered in a way that cannot be disturbed. The world may try to sway you, but you remain steady. Opinions may try to pull you in different directions, but you stay rooted. This stability doesn't come from ignoring the world. It comes from knowing yourself so deeply that nothing outside can override your inner compass. Consider how a tree grows. On the surface, you see the trunk, the branches, the leaves, but what gives the tree its strength is hidden beneath the ground, its roots. The deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. It can withstand storms, winds, and droughts because its foundation is secure. In the same way, solitude pushes your roots deep into the soil of your own being. It forces you to rely on inner nourishment instead of external weather. And once your roots are deep, no storm can uproot you. When you become rooted in your own truth, the chaos of the outside world no longer controls you. You may notice how the world constantly shifts, how opinions rise and fall, how trends change overnight. People may praise you one day and criticize you the next. But when you've awakened alone, you see through the illusion. You realize that external chaos is just noise on the surface. It does not define you. You carry a stillness inside that remains untouched, no matter what storms rage around you. This kind of foundation makes you untouchable in ways that are hard to describe until you've lived it. Imagine walking into a room where everyone disagrees with you, yet you remain calm, unshaken, because your truth is not up for debate. Imagine facing circumstances that would once have filled you with fear, yet you respond with clarity and peace, because you know the chaos cannot penetrate your center. This is not arrogance, it is sovereignty. It is the quiet confidence of someone who has faced themselves in solitude and found unshakable ground beneath their feet. Awakening alone also teaches you to let go of the need to control how others see you. When you have no audience, you stop performing. You stop molding yourself to fit the expectations of others. You stop diluting your truth to make it more palatable, and in that letting go, you become free. You realize that the opinions of others can neither add to nor take away from your essence. They are simply reflections, projections, fleeting thoughts in the minds of others. What matters is that you know who you are, regardless of how you are perceived. This freedom is priceless. It liberates you from the prison of approval, from the fear of rejection, from the endless cycle of seeking validation. You begin to live not for applause, but for alignment. You move not to please, but to embody your truth. And in doing so, you become a force that cannot be manipulated by opinions or swayed by external chaos. You become unshakable because your foundation is built on something eternal, your connection to the truth within you. There is a peace that comes with this foundation. It is not the peace of a life free from challenges, but the peace of knowing that challenges cannot defeat you. You no longer fear endings because you know they are part of the process. You no longer fear solitude because you know it is where you find your strength. You no longer fear criticism because you know it does not define you. You walk with a quiet assurance that everything you need is already within you. This assurance transforms how you experience life. You begin to move through the world with a steady presence. People may notice it without knowing why. They may feel calm around you, drawn to the stability you carry. They may even test you, unconsciously trying to shake your foundation. But when you remain unshaken, it speaks louder than words. It shows that true strength is not about dominating others, but about mastering yourself. And here is the profound truth. Once you have built this unshakable foundation, nothing can take it away. External chaos may come, but it cannot penetrate you. Opinions may change, but they cannot alter your core. Even when life brings unexpected storms, you remain steady, because your foundation is not built on circumstances but on truth. This is the gift of awakening alone. It forces you to dig deep, to root yourself in what is eternal, and to discover a strength that is untouchable. So if you find yourself in a season of solitude, if you feel stripped of support or misunderstood by the world, take heart. You are not being broken down. You are being built up. The universe is giving you the opportunity to construct a foundation that no one else can build for you. And when it is complete, you will carry within you an immovable core, one that can withstand any storm, ignore any distraction, and rise above any opinion. Remember this: the chaos of the world does not define you. The opinions of others cannot diminish you. The storms of life cannot uproot you. When you awaken alone, you become like the mountain, unmoved by wind, unshaken by storms, standing tall not because the weather is kind, but because your foundation is eternal. And once you discover this truth, you will never again fear solitude or chaos. You will welcome them, knowing they only strengthen the roots that make you unshakable. When you awaken alone, there comes a point when you realize that no one is coming to save you. No teacher is going to descend from the heavens with all the answers. No community is going to perfectly reflect your truth, and no guide can walk every step for you. This recognition can feel harsh at first, like being cast adrift in an endless ocean. Yet as you sit with it, you begin to see that this is not abandonment, it is empowerment. You are being invited into the path of the inner master, where you learn to cultivate self-leadership, to become your own teacher, your own guide, and your own healer. This is not a rejection of wisdom from others, but a reclamation of your own authority. It is the shift from dependency to sovereignty. Self-leadership begins the moment you stop outsourcing your choices to the expectations of others. Most of your life, you may have been guided by what society told you to want, what family told you was possible, what peers told you was acceptable. Those voices were loud and constant, shaping your direction without you even noticing. But when you step into solitude, those voices grow distant, and you begin to hear another voice rising from within, your own. At first, it may feel faint, uncertain, easily drowned out by old conditioning. But the more you listen, the clearer it becomes. Self-leadership is learning to trust this voice. It is choosing to align your life with it even when others do not understand, even when the world demands conformity. Walking alone forces you to face the truth about responsibility. When there is no one else to blame, no one else to lean on, you realize that every choice you make shapes your reality. This realization is both daunting and liberating. It strips away the illusion that someone else can dictate your destiny. It places the power back in your hands. To lead yourself means to decide consciously how you will respond to life. It means taking ownership of your energy, your actions, and your growth. This ownership is the essence of mastery. You are no longer carried by the current of external influence. You are steering your own vessel. As you cultivate this inner leadership, you begin to see that life is always teaching you, and solitude sharpens your awareness of its lessons. Every challenge, every delay, every unexpected twist becomes an opportunity to practice mastery. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this showing me?" This shift turns obstacles into teachers. You start to see patterns in your reactions, and you learn how to redirect them. You notice the ways your mind tries to pull you into fear or doubt, and you guide it back to presence. Each moment becomes a training ground where you are both the student and the teacher. Slowly, you realize you do not need an external master to shape you. Life itself is your classroom, and your soul is your guide. Becoming your own teacher does not mean refusing wisdom from others. It means filtering it through your own discernment. In the past, you may have accepted ideas without question, giving authority to anyone who spoke with confidence. But self-mastery requires a different approach. You begin to ask, does this resonate with me? Does this align with my truth? Does this expand or constrict my spirit? You no longer swallow knowledge whole. You taste it, test it, integrate what serves you, and release what does not. In this way, you build a wisdom that is not borrowed but embodied. You are not parroting the teachings of others. You are creating a living library within yourself, informed by direct experience and inner knowing. The path of the inner master also calls you to become your own healer. When you are alone, there is no one to soothe every wound, no one to fix every broken piece. You must learn to sit with your own pain and bring light to it. This does not mean you never seek help, but it means you stop expecting others to complete the healing for you. You learn how to comfort yourself when grief arises, how to release the tension that fear creates in your body, how to breathe through the waves of anxiety until peace returns. Each time you do this, you strengthen the connection between your awareness and your body, between your soul and your humanity. Healing becomes less about erasing wounds and more about integrating them. You begin to see that your scars are not flaws. They are maps of your growth, proof of your resilience, gateways into deeper compassion. As you walk deeper into this path, you may notice that your relationship with authority changes. You no longer idolize others as if they hold something you lack. You respect wisdom, but you no longer place anyone on a pedestal. You recognize that every master you have admired was, at their core, simply a human who learned to listen to their inner voice with devotion. And so you honor them not by worshipping them, but by embodying that same devotion in your own life. You realize that the teacher you were waiting for has always lived inside you. This realization is not arrogance, it is humility of the truest kind, because it acknowledges that the divine wisdom you sought outside has always been woven into your being. Solitude sharpens this mastery, because it leaves no room for illusion. When you are alone, you cannot distract yourself with endless advice or hide behind the decisions of others. Every choice rests with you, and so you learn quickly the cost of ignoring your truth. At first, this may feel overwhelming. You may fear making mistakes. But as you practice, you see that mistakes are not failures. They are teachers in disguise. Each misstep shows you more about who you are and where your path lies. Self-leadership is not about perfection. It is about courage. It is about choosing again and again to return to your own compass, even when you falter. As your inner mastery grows, you begin to radiate a different kind of presence. People notice the steadiness in you. They sense that you are not swayed by every opinion, not shaken by every storm. You may not speak often, but when you do, your words carry weight because they come from lived truth rather than borrowed belief. This is the quiet authority of the inner master. It is not loud, not domineering, not controlling. It is grounded, clear, and deeply authentic. Others may be drawn to you for guidance, but you do not encourage dependency. Instead, you reflect their own power back to them, reminding them that they too can walk this path. The journey of becoming your own teacher, guide, and healer is not always easy, but it is profoundly rewarding. It strips away illusions and leaves you standing in your raw truth. It teaches you that solitude is not emptiness but fullness. It is the place where you discover that everything you were searching for outside already exists within you. And once you have touched this, you are never the same. You no longer feel the desperate need for approval, the fear of being alone, or the compulsion to follow blindly. You walk with quiet confidence, anchored in your essence, guided by your own light. This path does not end, it deepens. Each day brings new opportunities to lead yourself, to teach yourself, to heal yourself. And each day, as you honor that process, you grow stronger, clearer, more aligned. You realize that mastery is not about controlling life, it is about aligning with it. It is about becoming so attuned to your inner truth that no external force can pull you away. And in this realization, you discover the freedom you have always longed for, the freedom to be fully yourself, walking alone yet never lonely, sovereign yet connected, human yet divine. This is the path of the inner master, and it is the path that solitude has been preparing you for all along. Have you ever wondered why loneliness feels so heavy, while solitude has the potential to feel liberating? What if I told you that the difference between the two is not about being alone, but about how you perceive yourself in that space? Loneliness is the ache of disconnection. Solitude is the discovery of connection to something deeper. The moment you begin to understand this difference, everything shifts. You stop seeing your aloneness as a punishment and start to recognize it as an initiation, a sacred passage that transforms loneliness into power. When you feel lonely, you are focused on what's missing. You notice the absence of companionship, the silence where conversation used to be, the empty space where validation once lived. Loneliness feeds on lack. It whispers that you are incomplete without others, that your worth depends on whether you are seen, loved, or supported by those outside of you. This belief makes loneliness feel unbearable because it convinces you that something essential is missing from your life. But here's the truth: nothing is missing. The discomfort you feel is not proof of absence, but the call of your soul urging you to turn inward. It is not telling you that you are broken. It is telling you that you are ready to discover your wholeness. Solitude, on the other hand, is when you step into the same silence and find fullness instead of emptiness. It's when you sit in the quiet and realize that the very thing you thought you lacked has been within you all along. Solitude is independence. It is the recognition that your value does not depend on being surrounded, entertained, or validated. It is the realization that you can be alone and still be complete. This is where the transformation begins. What once felt like loneliness becomes the doorway to empowerment. The journey from loneliness to power is not about avoiding the ache, it is about walking through it. When you sit in your loneliness without trying to escape it, you start to hear what it is really saying. Beneath the longing for others is a deeper longing for yourself. You begin to notice the parts of you that you've ignored while seeking connection outside. You hear the quiet voice of your intuition. You feel the presence of your soul. And slowly, the ache turns into awareness. You realize that loneliness was never about needing someone else, it was about needing to remember yourself. As you embrace solitude, you discover the strength that comes with independence. This does not mean cutting yourself off from others. It means no longer being dependent on them for your sense of identity or worth. You can love people deeply, but you don't collapse when they leave. You can share your life with others, but you don't forget who you are when you're alone. Independence is not isolation, it is sovereignty. It is knowing that you are whole whether you are surrounded by people or sitting in silence. This shift is powerful because it changes how you show up in the world. When you are rooted in independence, your relationships become healthier. You no longer seek others out of desperation or fear of being alone. Instead, you connect from a place of fullness, where love is given freely rather than demanded. Your presence becomes magnetic because you are not trying to extract energy from others. You are overflowing with your own. People feel this difference. They sense the peace in you, the steadiness, the quiet power of someone who has turned loneliness into strength. Think about how fire works. Left unattended, it can destroy. But harnessed with intention, it becomes warmth, light, and energy. Loneliness is like that fire. If you resist it, it burns you. But if you embrace it, it becomes fuel for transformation. It pushes you inward, demanding that you discover a power you cannot find outside of yourself. And once you do, the fire that once threatened to consume you becomes the very force that empowers you. The empowerment born in solitude is not fragile, it is resilient. It is the kind of strength that doesn't depend on circumstances. You may lose people, but you don't lose yourself. You may walk through endings, but you don't collapse. You may sit in silence, but you don't feel empty. Instead, you feel steady, whole, and unshakable. This is the difference between isolation and independence. Isolation is when you see yourself as cut off. Independence is when you realize you are connected to everything, even when no one is physically near you. Loneliness often convinces you that you are powerless. It tells you that, without others, you have no direction, no love, no meaning. But solitude shows you the opposite. It reveals that within you is a source of love that does not run dry, a guidance that does not fail, a meaning that does not depend on external approval. When you discover this, you realize that you were never powerless. You were simply untrained in listening to the voice within. And once you begin to listen, you find that the silence is not silent at all. It is alive, vibrant, full of wisdom and strength. Moving from loneliness to power also reshapes the way you see challenges. Instead of feeling crushed by isolation, you begin to recognize it as training. Every moment you spend alone becomes a practice of grounding into yourself, of strengthening your core, of proving to yourself that you are enough. And each time you rise from the ache of loneliness into the steadiness of solitude, you expand your capacity to handle life. You become someone who cannot be easily broken, because you've already discovered that even in the absence of others, you are complete. The most profound realization in this journey is that loneliness was never the enemy, it was the messenger. It showed up to guide you into independence, to awaken the power that only emerges when you stop depending on the outside to fill you. And when you embrace it, you find that the very thing you thought was breaking you was actually making you. So if you are in a season where loneliness feels overwhelming, take a breath and remember this truth. You are not abandoned. You are being invited. The silence you feel is not a void. It is the doorway to your own strength. The ache you feel is not proof of lack. It is the signal that you are ready to step into independence. And as you walk through it, you will discover a power that is unshakable, a presence that is magnetic, and a peace that no one can take away. You will come to see that solitude is not the absence of connection, it is the birthplace of your deepest connection to yourself and the universe. And from that connection flows a strength so profound that loneliness dissolves, replaced by empowerment. You will know that you are never truly alone, because the source of everything you seek lives within you. And once you taste that truth, you will carry it with you forever. That is the gift of solitude. It transforms loneliness into power, and it teaches you that your independence is not isolation, but liberation. When you have spent time in solitude and faced yourself fully, something remarkable happens. You emerge into the world with a clarity and steadiness that cannot be faked. At first, solitude felt like withdrawal, as if you were stepping away from life itself. But you come to realize that solitude was never about escape, it was about preparation. It was the training ground where you learned who you are without masks, where you built the inner strength to stand alone, and where you anchored into a freedom that no external circumstance can touch. Living as a sovereign being means taking what you discovered in the quiet and carrying it into every interaction, every choice, and every moment of your life. It means walking among others, but never losing yourself in them. When you return from solitude, the world looks the same, but you are not the same. You see through the illusions more easily. You notice how much of the world runs on fear, comparison, and distraction. You notice how people cling to external validation as if it were oxygen. You recognize patterns that once held you captive, and instead of falling back into them, you stand apart. This does not make you cold or distant, it makes you clear. You can move through the same spaces, talk to the same people, engage with the same circumstances, but you are no longer absorbed by them. You are no longer defined by them. You live in the world, but you are not of it. Clarity becomes your foundation. You no longer make choices blindly or reactively. You pause, you breathe, you listen inwardly, and then you act from alignment. That alignment may confuse others because it does not always match their expectations. They may not understand why you no longer chase what they chase, why you are content without the things they think are essential, why you carry peace in moments where they feel panic. But you do not need them to understand. The clarity you carry is not for approval, it is for direction. It keeps you aligned with your truth even when the world tries to pull you away. Strength becomes your companion. It is not the kind of strength that flexes for show or dominates others. It is quieter, deeper, more enduring. It is the strength of knowing you can stand alone if necessary. It is the strength of having faced your own shadows and survived. It is the strength of no longer needing the world to hold you up, because you have learned to hold yourself. With this strength, you no longer fear rejection, because you know your value. You no longer fear loss, because you have already discovered that everything you need resides within. This strength radiates in your presence. People feel it even before you speak. It is the energy of someone who cannot be swayed by every passing storm. Freedom is the fruit of sovereignty. When you are no longer tied to the need for external validation, you move differently. You express yourself without hesitation. You create without waiting for permission. You choose without being paralyzed by the fear of what others will think. Freedom shows up in the small moments, saying no when you mean no, saying yes when your soul lights up, resting when your body asks for it, creating when inspiration calls. Freedom is not rebellion for its own sake, it is authenticity. It is living in such alignment with your truth that you no longer betray yourself just to keep others comfortable. And this kind of freedom is magnetic, because so few people have tasted it. Walking among others without losing your independence does not mean isolating yourself forever. On the contrary, it allows you to connect more deeply than ever before. When you are no longer looking to others to complete you or validate you, you can actually see them as they are. You can appreciate them without attaching your worth to their approval. You can love without clinging, support without controlling, give without depleting yourself. Independence in this sense does not block intimacy. It makes it purer. You are free to stand fully in your truth, and in doing so, you invite others to do the same. There will be times when the pull of the collective tries to draw you back into old patterns. You may feel pressure to conform, to doubt yourself, to shrink. But sovereignty means remembering that you always have a choice. You can stand in the middle of a crowd and still hear your own voice. You can move through the noise and still remain tuned to your own frequency. You can participate in the world without becoming lost in it. The key is vigilance, not in a fearful way, but in a conscious way. You know who you are now, and you guard that truth with care. You do not let it be diluted by every passing influence. Living as a sovereign being also shifts your relationship with purpose. You stop chasing someone else's idea of success and begin following the path that feels alive for you. Your work, your art, your relationships all become expressions of your authentic self. You no longer live for recognition, but for resonance. And because you are aligned, opportunities that match your essence begin to appear. Life flows differently when you are sovereign. Instead of constantly pushing, you find yourself moving with ease, guided by an inner current that always knows where to lead you. The beauty of sovereignty is that it does not make you rigid, it makes you fluid. Because you are anchored in your truth, you are not afraid of change. You can adapt without losing yourself. You can shift directions without feeling broken. You can evolve without clinging to what no longer fits. Sovereignty gives you both roots and wings. Roots to keep you grounded in who you are, and wings to carry you into new horizons without fear. And this balance allows you to live with both stability and freedom, certainty and openness. The world benefits deeply when individuals live this way. A sovereign being is not easily manipulated. They do not fall prey to fear-based control. They do not participate in cycles of judgment and comparison. They do not perpetuate the illusions that keep others trapped. Instead, they radiate authenticity, and that authenticity is contagious. Even if others cannot name it, they feel it. They feel more grounded around you, more alive, more hopeful. You become a quiet example of what is possible when a person reclaims their inner authority. And, without preaching or forcing, you inspire others to explore their own sovereignty. Living as a sovereign being is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about returning to it with new eyes, new strength, and new freedom. It is about walking into familiar places as a different person, one who no longer gets lost in the noise, one who no longer bends under pressure, one who no longer forgets who they are. It is about carrying the gifts of solitude back into the collective, not to dissolve into it, but to elevate it by your presence. This is the paradox. You walk alone, and yet your walking transforms the world around you. Every step on this journey has led you here. The silence, the shadows, the collapsing identities, the discovery of your inner master. All of it was preparing you for this. To live sovereignly is not just a spiritual achievement, it is the foundation for a life of authenticity and freedom, and once you have tasted this way of living, you will never again settle for the chains of dependency. You will never again betray yourself for the illusion of safety. You will never again give away the authority that has always been yours. You will stand in the world as yourself, clear, strong, and free. You will walk among others without losing your independence, and in doing so, you will embody the truth that sovereignty is not isolation, but the deepest form of connection. Connection to your essence, to life itself, and to the infinite source from which you came.